Welcome back to the Power 2 here on College Football Addiction. TJ Pittinger, Cole Thompson, Tom Hannifan. Boys, how you doing?
I'm jacked up. I'm excited for this show. Diego Pavia has been talking a lot of trash lately. I'm excited to dive into that. College football playoff calendar, all that sort of stuff. Wild card should be fun today. Let's go, boys.
Yeah, we always got to start a show off by pissing me the hell off in the comment section well before. I'm sorry. Last time I checked, Mr. Cannell, your quarterback situation was so awful that you went 2-10 last year. I wonder what your record would have been with Diego Pavia starting for you. Yeah, he lost to Georgia State.
3-9, maybe.
Even though he did lead the 2-scoring drive comeback, he also beat number 1 team Alabama. He also beat Auburn and Hugh Freeze. He also beat 2 ACC teams. And I'm not even the biggest SEC homer like some people want to make it out to be. But when you talk about having a bad quarterback situation or a quarterback talking crap, just make sure that your quarterback delivered on his end of the bargain before you start throwing out the shots, okay? Let's just do that, Mr. Daniel. How about next time we start off a conversation that way, okay?
Danny knows that it gets under people's skin. That's the only reason he does it. He doesn't even believe it. He just knows that it riles Cole and the others up. Cole and Chris and all the folks. He knows. Danny doesn't. It's a good jab. It was a good jab.
It was a good jab.
Work.
It was a good jab. Minus the fact that the team that beat you week 1 in Ireland lost to this team in the bowl game. Just saying.
Bowl games only count if you win.
Yeah, bowl games only count if you win, Georgia.
Yeah, bowl games don't. Okay, I do hate this though. Maybe we'll get into this at some point in the offseason. Maybe not, because it seems like we have more and more news. But I used to love bowl season. They did used to mean something, and now it just sucks. Let's be honest. They really don't matter. Like I said, they matter if you win. And if they don't, you can just say, you can use whatever excuse you wanted. It's an exhibition. We had opt-outs. We had this, that, and the other. They don't mean anything now, especially with the playoff expanding. And it sucks because bowl season, I don't know. I don't know that it quite got up to March Madness level, but it was the second best thing to me after March Madness.
Agreed.
I still love bowl season.
Bahamas Bowl. To Charlotte, North Carolina, for crying out loud, guys. I mean, what world are we living in?
Yeah. I still like it, but it just, I wish people cared about it.
It no longer means the same as it did back in the 2000s, but you know what? You're not going to catch me sleeping on the Bahamas Bowl or anything going on in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I'm going to be fully fixated on those games as much as I am the college football playoff.
Oh, yeah.
Bahamas Bowl, not in the Bahamas.
I know, which is weird this
that's
year.
what I was saying. Yeah.
They should have played that I don't know, in a snowstorm or something, something up north. That's where they should have.
The Idaho Vandals, the Kibby Dome tweeted. We're like, cold is here.
I will gladly go to the Kibby Bowl. I will gladly
definitely go there. Oh my God, of course.
Great.
-2-degree weather, I'd absolutely show up for the Kibby Bowl.
All right, let's get into it because we got a lot today, and we'll try and finish up by 1 and get out of here on time. But let's start out with all right, $8 million. What is Lenore Sellers' camp? I mean, first of all, we'll talk about tampering. We'll talk about South Carolina a little bit. But listen, I love Florida State, and I don't have to make that known. I bring them into every. My kid I would wear orange and blue for the rest of my life if Florida offered my kid $8 million. $8 million. You're not talking about South Carolina was offering 7.5 and they offered 8, right? We're talking $8 million, way more. I mean, what is Cam Ward making this year for the Titans?
I think roughly around this year. I think it's more so around $6 million.
He's making more than the number 1 overall. Like I said, I hate Florida and I hate Miami, but I will wear orange for the rest of my life if one of them wants to offer one of my sons a scholarship for $8 million for 1 year. Is Lenore Sellers, are they crazy? Is Shane Beamer that good? Is he making maybe 6? So the $2 million jump is maybe not as big of a deal? Or what are your thoughts there, Cole? And then we could talk a little bit more deeper level on this.
So let's start off with this, because the report came from the Athletic story by Bruce Feldman. It's not $8 million for 1 season. It's $8 million for 2 seasons. So 2 years, it's $4 million per season, basically, is what the asking price is going to be. There's a sense of loyalty that comes with it, but there's also a sense of stability of having a structural quarterback. Let's just call a spade a spade. South Carolina's best chance to probably win a college football playoff game, multiple playoff games, and go on a run to a national championship was last year because of that stellar defense that they had. They lost a lot of pieces on that side of the ball. They're losing one of their best running backs and one of the more glues of the offense in Rocket Sanders, who is fully healthy. It's a new offensive coordinator coming on in with Mike Shula, with Dow Logan's going on over to App State. So there's reasons to say, hey, Lenore Sellers, if you want to go hit the transfer portal, cash in on a major deal, whether it be with an SEC school or maybe it is Florida State or it's a Big Ten school, by all means, $4 million is a lot of money. It's life-altering money, and you have to look at your advantages. But there also is a sense of pride of being able to afford your quarterback, because when you have that guy, you always have a shot. I look at some of the teams in the ACC this year, and one thing that truly stands out is the ones I am buying stock into are the ones that I believe have the highest upside when it comes to quarterback play. Haynes King, Cade Klubnik. I throw in a fully healthy version of what we're going to get with Miller Moss. I bring up Carson Beck because if I do, think he will be better than advertised what we saw last season. Same thing for the Big 12. My 3 favorite quarterbacks are the 3 best quarterbacks and the ones that I believe are going to have an opportunity to win that conference. And usually when your roster is complete, then you feel like that your quarterback maybe doesn't have to be number 1 or number 2, but they still have to be a quality player. South Carolina will have a shot to at least get to 9 wins, get to 10 wins, maybe punch their ticket to the college football playoff every year that they have 16 under center. So it's worth the price, because if you can't ask, as NFL teams constantly show us this year in and year out, the value of having a stable quarterback, having an altering playmaker at the most premium position, is the difference of you going into January with an opportunity to hoist up a Lombardi trophy or sitting at home wondering, what do we have to do to hit reset on our franchise and we don't actually have to completely rebuild. That's what South Carolina has. So when it's $4 million naturally feels like a lot of money for South Carolina, but it's money well spent. And it's money well spent for all 136 FBS programs, because of when the quarterback is as efficient, as productive, as I would say problematically upside, and still has yet to scratch the entirety of the surface, reaching his peak of value the way that Lenore Sellers is, there's a reason to believe that, yes, you pay that price, he's going to end up delivering on that end of the bargain. And while your team may still have questions on the offensive line, the run game, the defensive line, losing a ton of talent, you have an opportunity to win every single week. Cam Newton single-handedly brought Auburn to a national championship. And thank God Michael Dyer's knee wasn't down, or else we would have never seen Cam win a national title. But he basically drugged that team in every single week for an opportunity to win a title. Lenore Sellers can be that special version of a player. And if South Carolina is willing to spend that money, they think it's money well spent.
The interesting thing for me, we continue to talk about the cap coming up soon, $20.5 million. And it's like, all right, how much of that do you allot to football? For big time programs, is it $15 to $17 million? And then you get into the nitty gritty of, okay, what do you dedicate to your quarterback room? Not just your starting quarterback, but your quarterback room. And 4 out of $15 million, let's say South Carolina devotes that all to football. It's a huge chunk. Now, Lenore Sellers, to the points Cole just said, has proven that he is an appreciating commodity. I don't necessarily buy the argument of Cam Ward as the first overall pick. What's he getting in the NFL? Because it's a different level of play and he hasn't proven himself. So if anything, paying him more money actually doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I would pay more money now because I have a good idea of what Lenore Sellers can be, his production can be at this level. So I feel safer about that investment than I do any first overall quarterback in the NFL draft. So I like this. Sellers, I think it's funny that this just went down when Nico was trying to do the same thing in conference, was trying to get, I think, about $4 million. And his season last year wasn't as exciting. And he also went about it the wrong way. It sounds like Lenore Sellers has been upfront and been like, hey, I'm still coming to practice, doing all these things, and you work it out behind closed doors. So there's a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things. I think at the end of the day, the label of this topic is Sellers / tampering. It's like, yeah, ultimately, somebody's going to put an offer out there that isn't going to be above board, that Deloitte isn't going to be aware of at some point in time. Like, you're going to continue to see the McDonald's bag full of money in college football because it's been going on for decades. Just because we put all these rules and regulations in place doesn't mean somebody isn't going to show up at your house and give you a whole bunch of cash.
On that, with the tampering side of things, I just cannot imagine that ever stops until really enforceable penalties come in for it, until we get to a governing board. And the rule has always been the unspoken rule, right? You got unwritten rules in baseball. We got the College World Series going on. You got things you don't do. The unwritten rule of tampering has always been, I won't snitch if you don't snitch, because they're all doing it, right? And so who turns into the biggest snitch? Like, will we get programs that are tired of getting rated because you always get these coaches, right? I'm bouncing all over ideas, but you always get these coaches that come out and say, oh, well, this was happening to this player. And shoot, it happens in the SEC. I saw the Tennessee softball coach loosely accusing Texas Tech of doing this, as they've continued to pull in top transfers from not only Stanford with Kennedy, but Florida and Tennessee and other places. The Tennessee softball coach loosely accusing, we all know, A&M of what they're doing right now with tampering with other prospects, which I would then say, well, is Tony doing that? Is Josh doing that at Tennessee? Like, let's maybe not call out other schools when the guys down the hall are probably doing the same thing.
Right.
But tampering's never going to stop until, again, either one, we get really stiff penalties, two, somebody turns into a massive snitch that stops this. And even when that happens, even when Brian Kelly gets called out for, random coach, whoever, right? Ryan Day gets called out for tampering or whatever ends up happening. All that's going to happen is that a booster is going to start paying those players outside of what their rev share deal is. Like, it's just like coaches, right? Mike Norvell's salary, I believe, is about $350,000 from Florida State University. Right. And then the rest of his salary is made up from Seminole Boosters, which is not a state-run entity, because you can only pay so much at a state-run university, blah, blah, blah. That's going to be the same thing. Jeremiah Smith's rev share deal from Ohio State is going to be $400,000, right? Whatever random number you want to assign. And then the rest of his NIL is going to come from a private company. So I don't know. Tampering's just it's never going to stop, right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe one of you is more pie in the sky than I am.
Tampering never stopped to begin with. Like, tampering's been going on for over 2 decades. We can talk about the McDonald's bag. Now, instead of a McDonald's bag, you get an actual NIL deal from McDonald's because of one of the boosters is such a big problematic of that company. Like that's all it is. Like, Jim Schlossnagle knew he was going to the University of Texas before the final pitch against the University of Tennessee. They were an out away from winning a national title. And I have on good authority, Jay Slavolette knew, Gavin Grahovic knew, multiple pitchers knew, because if they were supposed to go follow him to the University of Texas, he was employing them while tampering as the head coach of the university. So tampering goes on no matter what, and it's not going to go away quietly. Here's the thing. Do you have 3 things that can go in your favor when tampering comes up? Number 1, a good booster collective that is going to be able to match any deal that would make a player happy. Number 2, an identity that is going to show why this team is trending in the right direction for you to be that missing link. And number 3, enough for you to feel confident that if there was going to be an offer out there, that you know that this player is special enough to go ahead and get you over that top. If you don't have those 3 things, then I'm sorry. Unfortunately, another school is going to offer something that you can't. But that hasn't changed any time in the last decade plus. It's been going on. The only difference is that the tampering that we're hearing about now has nothing to do with NIL deals specifically from the university. It has to do from Jim Bob out in Detroit, Michigan, that wants to get somebody to go play for the University of Michigan, and he has a deal with Chrysler, and he's going to pay for the entire family to put him on the commercials every single week. And by the way, he gets a 5% of all revenue that comes in through the actual building. That's the difference of tampering at this point. Hey, I have a car company. University of Arkansas doesn't. Sign on the dotted line and walk into Big Blue.
Yeah, don't see it changing. Don't think it ever changes. I don't even know how it would. Like, what's your most pie in the sky version of how this could change for the better? Everybody just starts to be honest with each other?
I think eventually you will see contracts, and TJ, you and I were talking about this before we came on, is eventually you're going to see contracts that are handed to recruits in the first place, where it's, hey, if we think the world of you, here's a 3-year deal with a 4th-year option, or we think so much of you, we want to lock you in for 4 years with a no transfer clause. Here's the money. Here's you'll play as long as you're physically able to and medically cleared, all that sort of stuff. So that can help out with the postseason bowl game issue we were kind of joking about there a minute ago. And then also I've heard the concept of buyouts and people talking about Madden Iamaliava, and he should, Arkansas trying to recruit money. It's like, okay, well, players want to pay a buyout to transfer the second that they don't get their way. That would be a deterrent, and that's something you write into a contract. So I very much think that's going to come at some point. Does that completely eliminate tampering? Not necessarily, but it would be a step in the right direction.
The way you get rid of tampering is
so on the NFL, like in the NFL model, I don't even know that I would include buyouts, just for what it's worth. Like in the NFL, can a player buy out his contract?
No, they can be released.
You can retire, but then the team still like retain the rights to your deal, I think.
So I don't even know if I would. I don't even know that if I would include that, because if a buyout for a player is $500,000, if Texas A&M is going to pay him $8 million over 2 years anyway, what's 500? What's 8.5? Right? Like, I don't even know if buyouts. I think buyouts prevent coaches from being fired. I don't think a coach's buyout, maybe 5% of the time, has ever prevented another school from hiring them. If you're going to poach a coach, poet and I didn't know it. If you're going to poach a coach, their buyout has never prevented you from poaching them. Now, in some situations, like right now, like Dan Lanning's buyout at Oregon is absolutely absurd. So yeah, maybe in 5% of college football, but like, I don't even know that I would write the buyouts in. I think I would leave that out too, because that is not going to be a deterrent for a 5-star type athlete, right? Or a high 4-star type athlete.
No, but at least it would give you some regulation on what is the contract part of it. And I think that's the main point, is that just having that contract signed when you committed to us, you said that you were here for X amount of years. If you want to go lead this program, that's totally fine. But we got to make sure that if we're giving this money, we're getting that money back by the university or by the boosters. And again, that's not the players' issue. That's everything to do with the NIL and the boosters that are working behind closed doors to get this deal done. And in that buyout, what you could also add in is, hey, we're willing to match the same offer that another school is willing to pay you. However, if we don't want to match you with that, then they have to buy us out. If you still want to leave at that point, that's fine, but they still have to buy us out. There's ways to go about it to where, yes, you can still fight to keep a player on your squad without actually having to go to the buyout level. But when a player decides, hey, listen, I'm done here, I want to go win a national title, and I feel like my best chance is at Arizona State, Texas A&M, they're going to have to say in return, that's totally cool. Arizona State, you owe us $200,000 to let this player come join your roster.
Does that open up the door for trades at some point?
Not yet, but I mean, it's going to happen at some point, I feel like.
We basically saw one with Aguilar and Iamaliava, essentially. But no, I think this is just going to get more and more like the NFL, where there are contracts and there are bumpers, those sorts of things. And listen, Charles Barkley put it extremely well recently. He's like, why would I give more and more money to Auburn when they're not going to ultimately get over the hump and win a national title in whatever sport I give money to? He's like, when I'm not getting anything back in return. He's like, I've given millions of dollars to my university. I don't get anything in return. We're in the era of ROI with the advent of private equity, especially in college athletics across the board. Every school, every player, every coach should be thinking about, what am I getting in return? I think that's very, very shrewd.
Yeah, no, I agree. I also wonder, like, how long until the NIL fatigue starts to set in more, right? How much can, like, Texas Tech's going pretty all in this year, just across a lot of sports. Really good in basketball, really good in football, really, going heavy in football, but went really heavy in softball. How many years can they lose to where it doesn't, it's like, all right, well, I'm tired of sinking this much in, or do they just have so much it doesn't matter? But at other places, I would imagine that happens at some point, right? And hopefully that helps stabilize things in the future as well. All right, let's talk a little bit about the playoff before we spend all day on tampering and NIL and stuff like that. 5-11 versus 4-2-2, 1-1-1-1-1 seems to be the big argument. And listen, I don't know what you guys' thoughts are on this, and I really can't remember if we've talked about this too much in depth, but I will say my hot take on this, or I don't even really know if it's a hot take, and I saw Pate said something really, really similar. I cannot believe that the ACC and the Big 12 would ever agree to a 5-11 model I think, especially when you kind of hear the conversation around the SEC strength of schedule, which we will all admit is better than everybody else's. Like, that's not even an argument to me. Even if I want to hate on the SEC, like, it is tougher week in and week out. We also talked offline, guys. The SEC probably has the best out-of-conference strength of schedule year over year in most situations when you look at the SEC and the Big Ten. So we'll get into the 9-game schedule here in a little bit as well. But I cannot imagine that the ACC and the Big 12 would ever agree to the 5 versus 11 model. What I will say is that versus the 4-2-2-2 or 4-4-2-2-2 model, I do agree that it's a bad look for the ACC to accept second place, to accept a lower standard and say, like, yeah, we're only worth half, right? We're only worth half of 50% of your auto bids. That's not a great look. In practice, I think the 5 versus 11 will screw the ACC and the Big 12 more years than it won't. I think you'll see that playoff littered with even more SEC and Big 10 by default teams. I think there would be a lot of years where the ACC and the Big 12 in a 5 versus 11 model would only get 3 teams in. Maybe some years where they'd only even get 2. I think 3 is more likely. Whereas in the 4-4-2-2-1-1-1-1 model, they would be guaranteed the 4-2 combined, have a chance for a 5th team between the two. Not that I think they would get that a ton, but the 5 versus 11 model, I understand why the SEC wants it. To me, it would be a terrible model to go to for everyone else, probably even including the Big Ten, if the strength of schedule is kind of factored in and combined in, at least for the present time. So I don't know. Thoughts on the 5 versus 11 versus the 4-4-2-2-1-1-1 model?
My brain hurts. I would go with the 4-4-2-2, however many after that model. I think that makes more sense. I think it's why you're seeing the likes of Brett Bielema being out publicly saying, hey, if they're going to play or if the Big Ten is going to play 9 conference games and we'd like the SEC to play 9 conference games because they want that to be even if the automatic qualifiers are going to be even, so that you have that same sample size of here's our win-loss record in conference play. The SEC completely understands, still trying to argue the fact that they have a stronger strength of schedule in and out of conference. So we're still dealing with this issue where it's not uniform. And then as Brett McMurphy was going into great detail yesterday on social media, and that is mind-bending in and of itself, is that this is still coming down to people's opinions. And I think that's the objective of everybody trying to put together the college football playoff, is get away from opinions and give us hard and fast measurables of you won X amount of games and you're in. And that's what gets you there, very much a pro model. So I think that's the frustration. I don't agree with going to 5 and 11. I just think that, I don't know, I think that kind of puts us right back where we've been with the playoff, and it's rewarding conference champions in a way that we have agreed doesn't really mean as much. So this is messy.
Cole, I want to go to you real quick, but I will say this too, in defense of Greg Sankey. I have no problem with Greg Sankey fighting for this, by the way. I think that he is fighting for what's absolutely best for his conference. He knows it's what's best for his conference. He knows he's going to get more teams in every single year than any other conference, in my opinion, including the Big Ten, based on perception, the way people think, the way the committee thinks, the way that strength of schedule will be favored more. I got no problem with Greg Sankey pushing this and fighting for this. I think it's ultimately good for the SEC, and if I'm in a conference, I want my commissioner to do what's best for him. I think all 10 other conference commissioners should be fighting him tooth and nail against it, and hopefully for their sake they win. But people will go anti-Greg Sankey on this. Greg Sankey's just fighting for what's best for him. His job is not to look out for what's best for the sport, what's best for the Big Ten, what's best for Jim Phillips or Brett Yormark or anything like that. So I will say that, like, as an SEC hater, I think he's just doing what's best for his conference, and I really don't have a lot of problem with it. But Cole, what is your take on, are you SEC homer enough to want the 5-11, or do you think it's bad for the sport? What are your thoughts here?
Greg Sankey's doing what Tony Petitti, what Jim Phillips, what Brett Yormark should be doing, fighting for their conference and not giving a care about the other leagues in college football. That's all he's doing. But as a college football purist, and I put down my SEC homerism, which I don't even think I have that big of it aside, I want what's best for the sport. What's best for the sport, and I'm going to hold your hand when I say this, ACC and Big 12 teams, is the 4-4-2-2 model, because it guarantees you at least 2 teams in. TJ brought this up. You're going to get 4 guaranteed roster programs in the college football playoff year in and year out with this model. 5-11 model, you'll have more advantages to be able to build rosters and fight alongside the SEC, fight alongside the Big 10, fight alongside the Big 12, and maybe you'll get that second and third team in. Or maybe you'll get 2 teams in, your conference champions, and watch as the SEC and the Big 10 and Notre Dame fill out the rest of the bracket, which again, that's what the SEC wants. And the reason the SEC wants it is because of, if you want to throw in a 9th game and you want to throw in all of these other addendums that Bielema and other coaches are asking for, well, keep in mind that you're only doing one more thing. You're strengthening their strength of schedule. The SEC every single year of the top 10 hardest ranked schedules features 9 teams. You don't think that if you throw in now an extra weekend of Georgia having to play LSU and South Carolina having to play Texas and Florida having to play Alabama with how these rosters are being constructed, that's not going to elevate their argument of, hey, we're playing 9 games and we have all these teams going 9-3, when if we had the 8-game schedule, half of them would be at 10-2 and we wouldn't have to worry about this conversation to begin with. He's absolutely fighting for that because that is what's going to give them the advantage when it comes to those things. And I understand that Brett Yormark and Jim Phillips are looking at this from the perspective of, if we go the 5-11 model, 11 at-large bids, anybody can be represented. But anybody also means the SEC can strengthen their schedule without a conference games. They can form somewhat of an alliance of sorts with the Big Ten and go, hey, we'll do the Big Ten versus SEC challenge. Therefore, we keep these other programs at bay and we only strengthen our resumes to get more representation in. And then when we see everybody kind of show up to the party, well, you have Clemson, you have Baylor, maybe you have an Arizona State that went 12-1 and only lost in the conference championship game. And then here's 9 other programs from the SEC and the Big Ten that are just ravaging their way through with 9-3 records. Which again, I don't doubt that from a standpoint. I want college football to have the most representation, the most diversity, because if I'm somebody that loves this sport. But the way that you do that is by kind of pigeonholing yourself to 4 or 5 teams at most. Because when you don't do it that way, you aren't guaranteed anything. You aren't guaranteed that the runner-up is going to have an opportunity. You aren't guaranteeing that your conference is going to be well represented. You aren't guaranteeing that coaches are going to want to be bought in, because why stick around and go 10-2 in the Big 12 or the ACC when an SEC job opens up? And I might be able to do the exact same thing and punch my ticket to the college football playoff. But probably the biggest point of all is that this kills the regular season. It does. It absolutely kills the regular season if we were to go to a 5-11 model. Because let me ask you guys something. In the 5-11 model, we have 2 automatic qualifiers for the Big 10 and the SEC. That's it. Then we have the 3 versus 6 matchup and the 4 versus 5 matchup. So you're going into the month of December and you're telling yourself, I'm sitting at 10-2. I just have to make sure I don't lose that 3rd game. And I'm automatically in the college football playoff. Tennessee did it last year. Indiana with an 11-1 record did it last year. Ohio State did it last year. 10-2, I'm in. When you don't have that 5-11 model, when you have the 4-4 model, you are guaranteed your spot. When you have the 5-11 model, all you're saying, when you have the 4-4-4, you have the 4-4-2-2 model, what you're saying is, we have 3 versus 6, 5 versus 4. I have to win these games so that way I get a better seed, get to host that game in my backyard, and better my opportunity of going to the college football playoff. Because hell, if not, guess what? I'm sitting at home or I'm going to the Citrus Bowl this season.
Here's one for Cole. Thanks for the super chat, Ryan. Ryan says Sankey knows that the SEC is weaker than the Big Ten, and that's why he's pushing for the 5+11. What do you think, Cole?
Cool. You want more representation for the SEC because 7 teams are going to get in over the 4 with the Big Ten? That's great. I'm cool with that.
I don't think he believes the SEC is weaker than anybody. I think that's the joke in there.
I'd say, who do you think the SEC is better than? What are you talking about?
Right. And at what point are we just going to get SEC versus Big Ten for the national championship? And if they're feeling generous, they'll be like, by the way, Notre Dame's invited to the party.
Ryan, I appreciate the love. Hey, if you're watching on Twitter, go over to our YouTube and check us out. For some reason, Twitter doesn't communicate well with streaming services, and so we can't see the comments. But if you'd like to comment, you can do that at any time on the YouTube, and YouTube actually plays nice with the streaming services. So go check us out over there and hit the subscribe button if you are watching. All right, we mentioned this a little bit in the last segment, but let's talk a little bit about some shots going back and forth. Brett Bielema starting us out, and then we'll talk about Diego here in just a minute, a different kind of shot fired. But we got some shots fired, which is always fun in June when there's not a ton of news, although there's plenty of news that we're talking about this week. Brett talking about the 9-game SEC schedule. All right, so I love people that fire shots at the SEC. I'm all about it. Like Danny Cannell I'm going to put a statue of him up there if I can never find one, just because I'm a big fan of firing the shots. I am not obsessed by any means with the SEC going to a 9th game. And I don't really understand why. The one part of it that I guess I do understand is that the SEC has the ability to schedule if they want, right? And every scheduling department is going to be a little bit different, and every program is going to think about this a little bit differently. The SEC does have the ability to schedule more cupcake games than the Big Ten does out of conference, right? And so, like, if that's what some of these Big Ten folks are hung up on, is the SEC getting one more kind of bye game, right, where they can play a weaker opponent than the Big Ten can, I guess I'm fine with that. However, I don't think SEC powers use that to their advantage as much. Like Florida always plays Florida State, Georgia always plays Georgia Tech, South Carolina always plays Clemson, and then out of conference they schedule pretty well too. We understand that Alabama's going to Tallahassee this year. Next year, or in 2 years, Georgia's coming to Tallahassee. LSU is playing at Clemson. They played at Florida State. Oklahoma and Michigan are playing. Like
Texas,
really
Ohio State. We can throw that one in. California's going there.
I don't think that. So if that's kind of the concern, I guess I understand that would be a gripe, but I don't think do lower level SEC schools maybe not have as strong of an out of conference? I mean, I guess, but I mean, Arkansas is not making a case for the college football playoff anyway, right? And so I don't know. This isn't as big of a deal to me, but Brett Bielema not very happy that the SEC is still at 8 conference games, and as an SEC hater, this does not rub me that wrong. I've never really cared that the SEC didn't play 9 conference games like the Big 12 and the Big 10 do. The ACC also doesn't play 9 conference games. But again, the ACC consistently playing out-of-conference games with large SEC programs obviously has Notre Dame on the schedule. You play Notre Dame once every 3 years if you're in the ACC, more if you're Clemson, Florida State, and others. So I don't know. I've just never... I like Brett Bielema going at SEC coaches. I liked it when he did it against Shane Beamer in the bowl. I like that, but this doesn't really matter to me. Like some people are so hung up on this 9th game for the SEC.
I think it is kind of what I was saying before. I read it more so as trying to have the same uniform conference schedule evaluation process for both the Big Ten and the SEC. The Big Ten playing 9 conference games. Okay, the SEC should play 9 conference games, thus 4 automatic qualifiers for each. So you can just, okay, everything is the same and you match it together. And that's why the SEC gets so bent out of shape, is because they don't believe they're the same as anybody else. They believe they're bigger and better and have a tougher strength of schedule than everybody else. So why should it matter how many games they play? I do understand the point you're saying about non-cons, but I took it mostly as Bielema saying, if we're saying, okay, 4 automatic qualifiers, great, play the same amount of conference games, so that way we can go boom, 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 right down the list. Here are the teams that make it. Here are the teams that don't.
29-34. Let's just start off there. That was your record at Arkansas. So let's talk about when you win in the SEC before you start coming at the SEC. I'll go at that point. I'm going to say the quiet part out loud because I feel like that everybody, including the haters of the SEC, need to hear this. So come close, really close. You're here? Good. Call ESPN. They're the ones in charge of the scheduling. They're paying for 8 conference games. Why are you going to openly play an extra game that is only going to hurt your resume, hurt your schedule, hurt your odds of going to the college football playoff for the quote-unquote love of the sport? Nobody does anything for love anymore. Nobody goes anywhere for love anymore. Nobody does anything for appreciation anymore. You're not going and staying an extra 20 hours at work because of you love your job. You're doing it because of you're getting a bonus. You're doing it because of you're getting extra pay. The reason why people say, hey, you have to work overtime and you get paid twice and a half is because of it's extra work that was added on in. You can come at the SEC all you want, and I completely understand it, and I will continue to push for 9 games. I am an SEC fan that wants 9 games. I want that November cupcake schedule matchup out of the way. I'm tired of seeing an FCS Chattanooga or an Austin P on the schedule. I say this as an SEC fan, but you're coming at the wrong people. You're coming at the wrong coaches. You're coming at the wrong athletic directors. You got to go at 2 people. Those who are making this schedule with ESPN and are funneling in the money for 8 conference games, and the school presidents that want more money and more repercussions to schedule that 9th conference game. So please, I'm begging you, do just a little bit of research. It takes 5 seconds to go on to Google and type in, why does the SEC play 8 conference games? Because that's what ESPN is paying for. They're not paying for a 9th, and until they do, this is a moot point. It is a dumb argument. I'm sorry. It is. You're barking up the wrong tree. It has nothing to do with anything other than a paycheck that should be added on at the end of the year when ESPN writes these to the schools in the conference.
Something I would really like to see is I would like to see the SEC and the ACC go to a 9th conference game for the sole reason of I would like that game to be a wild card game set by the schedule. Like, your schedules are set out so far in advance, right? You kind of know what they're going to be, and we'll see what the SEC does, because this year's schedule is just an inverse of last year's. So we'll see kind of how it's shaken up next year. But I would like for that 9th game to be a complete wild card. Like, if I'm a Florida State fan, right, which I am, we've got our 8 games that were already set, right? You've already kind of got most of your plans. We're going to make your 9th game completely based on storylines from last year. Right. And so I don't know who that opponent would be. Just off the top of my head, maybe you make SMU make the return trip back to Tallahassee because Florida State went out there last year. Right? There are no good storylines after 2-10, so maybe Florida State's a bad example to use with this. But if you're Alabama, right, and you didn't play somebody last year that would be kind of a fun storyline this year, maybe it's Oklahoma. Maybe, I don't know, right? But I'd like to see that game become a wild card game that you just kind of make up each year. You kind of have your set schedule, but you get something based on last year's game. Kind of like the NBA, how the NBA will schedule like a Christmas Day game to be a finals rematch, or if nothing else crazy is going on, they'll make it Lakers Celtics because that's just a great rivalry. It wouldn't be a rivalry game in your 9th one because those are already kind of set, but that would be kind of a fun aspect, right? This year, Clemson SMU, I don't think play, so that would be the fun one, right? You'd give us, actually no, I think they do, but if they didn't, you'd make that a rematch of last year's SEC champion or ACC championship game. Maybe you do something similar with the SEC too. But yeah, I'm in full agreement with there, and I don't really think the 9th game matters that much. We talked about this off air, but not only will the SEC pick up 16 more losses by going to a 9th game, 8 more losses. They'll pick up 8 more wins as well. Right?
And just humor me out of curiosity, TJ. What if one of those wins against the number 2 team in the country? Oh, wow. So you strengthen the resume at that point, which means that there really is no argument when a Penn State team is playing down to the wire with, say, a Minnesota team that goes 7-5.
So speaking on the Big Ten, Diego Pavia, I feel like when you beat Alabama, you literally can just say whatever you want for the rest of your life. Yeah, like there's just no, like if Thomas Castellano somehow upsets Alabama in game 1, obviously he'll never buy another drink in Tallahassee. It really doesn't even matter what the rest of the season does. Now, does he meet the high requirement to grab a drink in Tallahassee? That might be a different question. But Diego Pavia is certainly not afraid to take some shots at the Big Ten. Tom, I want to get your thoughts on this first, just because it was a shot at the Big Ten and you are our resident Big Ten defender here, or at least, play one for this hour. What thoughts on Pavia going after the Big Ten QBs after his magical 7-6 season last year at Vandy?
Listen, I can be very unbiased. The quote from Diego Pavia, according to a post by On3, is, quote, "You want to play with the best. You don't want to play with the Big Ten. You ignore those calls." He went on to say the SEC, it's like week after week, you're going to get beat on. The Big Ten, you're not going to get beat on with the Purdue, Nebraskas. Okay, part of me is hearing his argument as a Penn Stater. I'm the first person to say it's a 2-game season this upcoming year. Hosting Oregon, at Ohio State, every other game on the schedule. No disrespect to Indiana. Some of the other teams that Penn State's got to play. they should go 10-2 at absolutely worst, and they should be able to win the rest of those games. They will have some competition, but still, I look at it that way. One, Diego Pavia, you are 2025's Matt Grothy, okay? You are not Johnny Manziel. You are not Baker Mayfield.
Tampa legend Matt Grothy, by the way.
Realistic thought process that I think everybody should go through. And Cole, I texted you about this and you vehemently disagree. How many teams could Diego Pavia actually start for in the Big Ten this upcoming year? It's maybe half. Every other team, I'll go through them right now.
I want to go through and I'll see if I agree with you or not. Because I actually have
start over Dante Moore at Oregon.
No.
You start over Fernando Mendoza at Indiana.
I'd push no, but I could at least see a conversation. But I'll push no. I'll give you that.
Drew Aller at Penn State.
No.
Julian Sand at Ohio State.
Because of the upside, no.
Luke Altmaier at Illinois.
That's one that I would go lean that line because I have them both ranked next to
Go
each other.
Altmaier.
They're in my rankings, but I'll go Altmaier. I will go
Jaden
Altmaier.
Mayafa or the promise of Hassan Longstreet at USC.
I would not take Jaden Mayafa. It's me. I don't like Jaden Mayafa. So I'm
Damon Williams at Washington.
Don't do this to me. Yeah, it's Damon Williams.
Dylan Raiola at Nebraska. The aforementioned Nebraska.
Hey, you know what? Maybe if you go back to the wishbone offense, things start turning your way. You don't know.
I'm not the biggest fan, but Nico Iamaleava, in terms of physical gifts and skill set, has a much higher ceiling at UCLA than Diego Pavia could. So listen, I understand that he's standing up for it, and he's feeling big, even though he is not. But seriously, you beat Alabama in a down year. Congratulations. Great season. The point that Danny Cannell brought up, everybody's been pointing at like his absolute worst. And somebody pointed to a loss that he had, I think in 2022 when he was playing for New Mexico State, and he just had an awful QBR. So it's like, all right, let's not get into the weeds with these little things. It's just a matter of if you put Vanderbilt in the Big Ten today, where would they be? Middle of the pack. Maybe top half by a smidge. So don't all of a sudden think that you're some mega power player because you played for a good Vanderbilt team last year, which, by the way, good at Vanderbilt is something James Franklin has done before. So congratulations on that accomplishment. Listen, I understand that the SEC, they think they're king. You are a world-class idiot if you turn down a recruiting phone call from a Big Ten team because of the money you can make and the opportunity afforded to you. That is a stupid take by Diego Pavia.
You said that Vanderbilt would be smidge, middle, maybe slight top half in the Big Ten, right? Yeah, usually they're the bottom dweller. They're the Purdue or the Northwestern of the SEC. So, where do you put the SEC? Where do you put Purdue and Northwestern in the SEC with that ranking?
The way the Big Ten's shaken out this year, I'm not going to discredit what Vanderbilt's able to do this upcoming season, what they did last year. Sure, yeah, you're going to be there. But for him to say it's like, nah, we're better than the Big Ten. I'm better than the Big Ten. Like, what if Vanderbilt had never called him? What if Northwestern had called Diego Pavia and he was like, well, I'm at New State? He would have taken any lifeline.
So, but again, think about it this way, Tom, just to play devil's advocate here. If the Big Ten called him and it was a school, let's say Wisconsin for that matter, Wisconsin that has been known for its physical approach and its downhill running style, something that Diego Pavia is great at. What if they called him and he ended up helping Luke Fickell get to 8 wins last year? Well, you know what? He's probably telling that the SEC can shove it because those schools didn't want him when he was coming out of New Mexico State. But you know who did want him? Vanderbilt. So now he is standing up for the conference. With that being said, Pavia, you can say whatever you want in the offseason, but you better back it up in the regular season. Alabama has you circled in big black permanent ink. It's tattooed on their arms, your face. Hugh Freeze can't afford 4 consecutive losses to you when you were at New Mexico State and he was at Liberty, and 3 straight years at Auburn. He can't get away from you. He has to at least win one of those games. You have to back it up. So I stand on that. The other thing that I will say is that people, and this is not against Tom, this is not against anybody, but can you go back and watch the clip? Like, it's on 3, and it's a website taking one instance of a clip, 30 seconds, and creating a narrative around it. Who are the 2 hosts of Bussin' with the Boys? It's Taylor Lewan and it's Will Compton. Where did they play? They played in the Big Ten. Of course he's going to take some shots at Big Ten competition when both of those teams were underwhelming when they were there. Like, that's kind of just the point of it. It's a banter. They were laughing afterwards. It was not like this sensual tension that comes on in. More people need to go outside and touch grass if you're going to get affected by how Diego Pavia ruins your day by calling out the Big Ten, a conference which, again, if we're going to be completely fair, Big Ten, the SEC rallies together and rides on the coattails of 4 teams. It's the same 4 teams every year at every conference. It is. It's Penn State. It's now Oregon. It's Ohio State. 90% of the time, it's Michigan. But if it's not Michigan or Penn State, you throw in that random team, and now they're the representative for you. Just like in the SEC, it's Alabama, it's now Texas, it's Georgia, and 95% of the time, it's LSU. But you can maybe throw in every once in a blue moon an Ole Miss or maybe a Missouri one year. That's just it. They all have 4 teams that stick above everybody else. But because Vandy said it, a guy that actually was able to beat up on a team that beat Georgia 2 weeks prior, now we're all butthurt about it. I think it's dumb. I think it's stupid. I have no problem with what he said. I'm all for it as long as you can back it up on the field. When you go into Tuscaloosa, you better be playing like you are a Heisman Trophy winner. When you go play against Auburn, you better be playing like you're a Heisman Trophy. Better yet, when you go to Lane Stadium come week 2 and you have to play against Enter Sandman at Blacksburg, Virginia, you better beat the crap out of Virginia Tech a second time, because if you did it once in your backyard in a stadium that was still under construction. So, like, I'm willing to go ahead and say, talk your mad smack. Just don't be the guy who's in the meme pouring champagne on himself but sitting in the 7th place spot. Just don't be that guy.
You mentioned Alabama having Vandy circled. Does Vandy have Georgia State circled this year? Is that a black circle game for them?
Yeah.
All right, another super chat from Ryan real quick, and then we'll go to college football schedule. I don't know exactly what this is referencing, but it might be that he's saying the Big Ten will three-peat this year. SEC is weaker than the Big Ten. The Big Ten will three-peat this year, which will make Sankey's head explode. Listen, I'm not trying to give Tom a hard time here, but is Ohio State their best chance to three-peat?
No.
Is it Penn State?
It might be Penn State.
It could be Penn State.
Or Oregon. I think the jury is still out. You have to see what Oregon develops into. It's really those 3.
Yeah, it does feel pretty wide open this year. I mean, you know, with 5 or 6 teams that could do it. But
let's just bring it up this way. From the SEC's perspective, how many teams do you actually think can win a national title?
Georgia, Texas, I guess LSU, but until I see it, I need to believe it.
Yeah. Bama, the jury's still out. So maybe
I would say 4 right now.
I'd say 3.5. Yeah.
I would say 3.5 to 4. I think that there are 2 in the Big Ten. I don't think that Oregon this year can do it. I think it's Penn State and it's Ohio State.
The thing that would really annoy everybody is if freaking Notre Dame won the national.
I was going to say, get ready for my boy Klubnik to come in and do it. So
listen, I'm not going to agree. Again, I'm tired of everyone being like, "Oh, he's such an AC, like he hates, like he only loves the SEC." Guys, Clemson's my number 3 team in the country. I have Penn State at number 1. Like, the SEC homer has a Big Ten team at number 1 and an ACC team top 3. Neither one of them is going to shock me if they run the table and punch their ticket to Miami.
Let's talk about the calendar a little bit. 2 major sticking points here with the college football calendar, and Tom and I were talking about this a little bit off air before we got on. But talking about the portal. Majority of coaches want a 10-day portal period in early January. Many administrators, as well as coaches in the Big Ten, are supporting an April portal date. This is from Ross Dellinger, by the way, as a way to more align the portal with the academic calendar, which ends in May, and a school's new revenue sharing cap, which ends in June. Now, we have got our thoughts on the cap, which, you know, we don't have to necessarily revisit. But I'm not a fan of a spring portal window for the very reason of I think it's asinine and stupid to go through an entire spring of introducing new guys to your roster and then have a transfer portal. If that's the case, I almost think you have to move spring football to the summer, right? Move it to May, which then at that point you're out of school. So how does that work? I don't know that it does. But some split thoughts here. To me, the January window just makes the most sense. You then get your workouts in the winter done. You get your spring football done. But I understand the thought of trying to align it more with an academic calendar and trying to align it more with your new year of revenue, right? Most programs run from July 1st to January 30th as a fiscal calendar. So I kind of understand that thought. I think a spring portal window, if you're just going to have one, is asinine. I don't know if you guys have thoughts on the portal there.
I prefer the portal immediately after the playoff because, granted, the spring game is dying, and if that completely goes away, yeah, I'd understand that being there in the spring. But if you're already starting winter workouts, spring ball, as long as they stay intact the way they are, getting the transfer portal out of the way once the entirety of the playoff is done, not in the middle of it, any of that stuff, after the national championship, that would be my vote for the portal.
Full agreement with Tom. You allow players to stay through the roster all the way up until the national championship. When they are eliminated, they have a 14-day period to enter the portal if they so choose. And at that point, it allows you to build your roster, and that's substantial value. Because let's just say it this way. Again, a Malik Murphy back in 2023 or Bro Pabula last year in 2024. Anything happens to a Drew Aller or to a Quinn Ewers, you're down one of the more significant players that might give you an opportunity to not only win a national title and keep your hopes alive, but also boost their NIL value. Like, imagine if Bo Pabula had to come in and face off against Notre Dame and he leads Penn State to a national title appearance. Even if you get Drew Aller back in that game, well, Bo Pabula at that point has at least earned an extra $1 million because of look at what he did sitting on the bench the entire year and getting the opportunity to play. So I am in agreement with Tom. It should be right after the college football playoff comes to a conclusion. You should have anywhere between 10 to 14 days to decide if you're entering the portal. And I think you should have no longer than 10 days to figure out where you're going next, which is going to be a very busy period for a lot of coaches. But let's just call it as is. Most college football coaches live in their office these days throughout the months of January all the way up until June.
Yeah, they get paid enough to where I don't care how much they have to work. The other sticking point, a June signing day. Ian Ross's article, is this a must with a cap model? I kind of think so because it could make sense from the salary cap angle. However, why I don't like this is if you sign guys in June or July, you are missing, and I've spoken with Mike Norvell about this directly, you are missing the entire data point that is their senior year. How many guys rise through the rankings? How many guys, have great senior years that impacts the amount that they're sought after? How many guys absolutely fall off a cliff their senior year or unfortunately get hurt their senior year that then impacts their ability to play or where they can play at the next level? And then what about just the needs of your team changing, right? If you have a quarterback or a running back that gets hurt and is going to come back for another year, does that change what your board looks like through the year? I don't love the idea of a June or July signing period. I think that's counterintuitive to the way that our sport works. I think that guys' senior years are a massive data point, probably the largest data point when signing a recruit and wanting to continue to pursue a recruit. So I don't love that. But again, from a salary cap standpoint, if your fiscal year starts over on July 1st, how do you allocate resources for your December signing class? So I guess I kind of understand why some coaches would push for a summer signing period. I think in practicality, it's pretty stupid.
I agree with the complications there, to your point about losing the data point of the senior year. And you're also seeing so many more players reclassify and trying to wrap up their studies quickly at the high school level so they can get on campus by May or June, and that being their freshman year as opposed to waiting another calendar year. So I agree. It's another tough thing. Unfortunately, like, it does feel like if you just crammed it all into January, that would probably be best, but that sounds like a nightmare for recruiting departments.
There's not a really big win here because of if you do, there's another way you can go about it. Like if you were to say, hey, the signing day is in June. Are we talking about the signing day for players after their senior season, or are we talking about going into
their senior season?
And that's where I completely disagree. But there also is no win point there because of, let's say it was after your senior season. You commit in June before you get on campus. What if there are some players that want to be early enrollees? You take that out of the context completely because of they can't arrive until the beginning of June. So there's not a win-win here. And also, here's going to be the other thing. you're going to see a lot of these players that end up hitting their mark and over exceeding in their senior years. They're going to go back to the collectives and say, hey, I'm technically not on campus. I'm just committed to you. I only signed my letter of intent. Now you are got to pay me a little bit more in NIL collectives, because why would I stay here when another program is going to want to tamper with me and bring me in for an extra $2 million? So there's not a win-win formula when it comes to this type of model. And I don't think it's ever going to work in that vicinity. I think that there should be one signing period, but I also think that signing period should be in the month of January or in late December. And then you decide right then and there, do you want to be an early enrollee? I'm sorry, that just feels like the most easy step pathway.
The toughest thing to me is that they align it so much with the school calendar, and we need to probably get to a point where we get away from that, right? I know that's maybe not popular. I know that some people really put an emphasis on academics, and I have no problem with that. I have never stood outside of a classroom while kids took a test and cheered for them to do well. Not that I want them to fail tests or anything like that, but I don't really care about the academic side, just to be very frank. And again, people might not like that. They might like it. I don't really care. But I do think, it probably just needs to be separated away. Or is it that hard to create a waiver for somebody to transfer in mid-January, past the drop ad date? Like, if you've got to align it to a school calendar, make the transfer window early and let guys jump in on January 15th, if that's what or January 30th, right? Is it that big of a deal that they miss 2 weeks of classes? Most of them likely aren't going to half of them anyway. All right, real quickly on the wild card, we're going to build our ultimate program. We'll just go down the list on this. We've got 6 different things that you can choose from. You get to choose a coach at a current school. You get to choose facilities, location, NIL, uniforms, and logo. We'll go Cole, Tom, me, Tom, Cole.
So I start off?
You start off and finish. I will go twice in the middle. You get to pick a coach first. You can pick any coach that you want.
Give me Kirby. Just knock it out. Best coach in college football and somebody that's going to be able to work with the boosters to get in the right type of players. Kirby Smart.
I will go with... Give me Kenny Dillingham. Wait, it's Tom's point.
No, it's Tom's turn.
Sorry, you can have.
Are we allowed to repeat, or once somebody or something is taken?
No, he's gone. Kirby's gone.
You're out with Kirby.
That's tough. Give me Dan Lanning. I like what Dan Lanning's done out of Oregon. I believe in his future.
And I'll go Kenny Dillingham for my coach here. I just like his energy, and you guys took my first 2. Facilities. Tom can go first on this one.
Oregon, once again, state of the art. They put a lot of money into that facility, and it's pretty up to date.
We'll keep it the same rotation each time, so I'll go first on this one. I will go with facilities. I'll go with Texas A&M's facilities.
Damn it.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty big win. For obvious reasons. I don't know if I need to explain everything on each one of them. Cole?
I'll go homerism, and I'll just go to the University of Alabama. They've been the state of the art, and they've been the standard in college football for a while for facilities. Let's just go back to Tuscaloosa.
Location. I'm actually happy that I got this one, and as a rival, probably will upset some people, but I'll go Miami. I think the talent around the area of Miami is still the best in the country. I also think being able to sell people on that lifestyle is very advantageous. It's very easy for families to get to as a major airport. It's not I love college towns, don't get me wrong, but I think it's easy to sell Miami. I'll go there. Cole.
It's going against everything I stand for, because if I love college towns, but there's very few places like the state of Texas, and calling it the flagship is absolutely where you want to be. Give me Hookham. Give me the University of Texas at Austin. The University of Austin, the airport's right there. I can have people coming in from Cedar. I can have people coming in from Dallas, from Houston. It's no longer than a 3-hour drive. It's the mecca of everything in the world of college football in the state. Go ahead and give me Hookham.
Give me Tampa, Florida. I will take that airport over any airport in America. You get that beach type vibe, which is always something nice to sell. And you stay in one of the 2 biggest states for recruiting. And an important thing, no state income tax in both Texas and Florida. So that's going to be a selling point for recruits in the future.
NIL, I'm keeping it because we're looping back around. Then it'll go Cole and Tom again. This is really tough. based on what angle you want to go. But I'll go Texas. I wanted to go Oregon here, and I'm sure one of you will, but I'll stick with Texas. I think Phil Knight will eventually die, and that's not as long term as the Texas Oil. So that was a tough one for me. Cole, you're up next.
I mean, I'll take Phil Knight until he's dead because you're going to put money into that place. Give me Oregon and give me Phil Knight as my booster.
Speaking of oil money, give me Texas A&M. I will take that any day. That's easy NIL. If my honorary second would have been Texas Tech.
I almost went Texas Tech. I
Very
almost went
current
Texas
oil
Tech.
money.
Just throw money, figure it out.
They were close for me too. I feel like you can't go wrong with any Texas school. All right, uniforms. So we're going back to Tom here on this. Actually, wait.
No, it's Tom. It's Tom.
Yeah. All right, Tom on. Actually, you know what? We'll combine these. I got one more that we'll throw in as a wild card. The wild card uniforms plus logo. We'll put them on the same thing. So uniforms for Tom.
I am a sucker for Texas, especially in the all white, and I have Vince Young trotting into the end zone against USC burned into my memory. I love those uniforms.
I am for the psycho shit that comes out whenever we watch these uniforms, the combinations I could come up with. I'm sorry, but the fact that you have a guy like Phil Knight just cooking up things left and right in that building, give me the Ducks, give me the Oregon uniforms, because I get to make any combination I want.
So on Tom's, I was actually second, but they're not my pick, so it works out fine. I'll go full homer here, but I do think Florida State has some of the best uniforms and one of the best logos. I'm not a big fan. Speaking on logos, Texas's was really high for me too. I'm not a big fan of like. No offense to the SEC, like Auburn's logo, which is just an A and a U. I'm not a big fan of Michigan's logo, which is just the M, although it is kind of iconic. I like logos that actually have something to them, like Texas's logo, like Florida's logo.
Tulane, the greatest logo set in sports.
Like an actual logo. I don't just want your letters there, right? The Alabama logo is very iconic, but it's just not that special to me. I like a logo that is an actual logo, not just a combination of letters. And I do think Florida State's logo is really good, and so are their uniforms, even after Nike ruined them in 2014. All right, last one, and then we'll go, since I took logo out. How about a stadium? You can pull any stadium from anywhere. You get both the stadium and you get the home crowd that is associated with it. Cole, you can go first on this one.
This sucks because there's so many ways to go. I'm going to go a little bit of homerism. I call it the ultimate cathedral of chaos. I think that the atmosphere, because of how compact it is and the environment on a Saturday night, there's no one else that beats it. I go Williams-Brice Stadium in South Carolina. I love what Willie B's stands for. I love what Willie B's all about. I think it's one of the most underrated atmospheres in college football on a Saturday evening.
Tom, I'll let you go first here. I'll take it home.
I'm a super homer on this one. Beaver Stadium, 110,000, home of the whiteout. It is an older stadium, so in terms of facilities that you could pick, there are definitely healthier, newer stadiums that you could pick. But in terms of home turf advantage, all that sort of stuff, I'll take Beaver Stadium. It is electric.
Yeah, I can't believe that I got to go last year and still get my first pick, but I'll take Baton Rouge. I'll take sorry, Clemson fans, the real Death Valley. I don't know if there's a more intimidating place to play. Hopefully they can find a way to win one of the openers there that they have. Well, I guess that's in Clemson. So yeah, they don't even have
to wait a year for that one.
Yeah. But I'll take LSU. And if, give me LSU with, we all have great picks. We all just picked like top 3 of everything, but give me LSU with, Miami's backdrop. I'm put it on campus. I don't just get rid of something that's on campus. I don't care. Some school facility. Don't care about the kids anyway. Let's roll with Death Valley in Miami. So, all right, we did it in a little over an hour, but we got through the show. TJ Pittinger, Tom Hannifan, Cole Thompson. Let us know if you watch this. Let us know in the comments who has the best setup there. Maybe we'll create a graphic or something, but maybe not. That's a lot of stuff to put together. But thank you guys for tuning in. The Power 2 here in College Football Addiction. Hit subscribe. If you're not already, go check out the YouTube. And we will talk to you guys next week at noon. Thanks, guys, for hanging out.